subject of critical thinking, although I have some critical things to tell about critical thinking because I'm in a very high spirited mood today, and I see things very funny today. I read things very funny. I listen to very funny messages, and I hear very good news also. So today is a very high day for me. So so, so I am very happy. So let me tell about the critical thinking. What critical thing I think about critical thinking. What I think about my thinking. Let me tell you that because I have a whole set of very technical thing to go about critical thinking, and critical thing is a thinking is a thing which which actually gives you a process to be very correct in the end. So whether your outcome is good or not, but your thinking thought process should be very logical, right? So I am not a very logical person. So how does critical thinking is applicable to me then? That is what I was thinking when I was reading through critical thinking to teach it as a subject. So I am a very intuitive kind of person, and the first thing that comes to mind for everybody, it is usually true. It is usually it usually proves to be correct. So uh, so then how do I teach critical thinking, which I am not very convinced about? So um, then the funny aspect of critical thinking is one needs to think about one's own thinking. And the very important thing about critical thinking is it allows you to think for yourself, not depend upon other somebody else. Like say, people in office or in an organization or institution setup, they actually depend upon their superiors or the bosses for their own decision making. But critical thinking actually brings in another perspective other than what the usual thinking in the team is. So that is very interesting for me because it also brings about a element of rebel, and I'm also a very non-conventional type, so I always kind of welcome this rebel attitude, and I always challenge what is treated as very conventional. And like say, I hate the words like one should do this and should do that, right? So I don't conform to that kind of thinking. But at the same time, being in a team actually warrants one to uh, listen to the other person's opinion also. So that is where critical thinking comes in. Why should, like say, if I am not very convinced about why should I listen to the other person, I'm not going to listen to him, right? And there will be a fighting every day and every moment. So there are some basic thumb rule that I have put for myself, and those are very effective actually. Thank you, Ranjan. So those are very effective. What are those rules? I'll say one by one. Those rules are the whatever the other person is saying is 10% correct, right? So 10% correct is means I can see the value in the other person's opinion. So that is how I accept the person. Although I don't like the the thought process that is very very conventional, but I don't dislike the people who are having those thought process. Everybody has a thought process because of certain circumstances in life, and we need to accept that. So that is what a critical thinking process is, and there are several things why one should be thinking correctly, because correct thinking correctly and thinking critically, thinking logically, these are very 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 different from each other. So thinking intuitively is like say very very highly evolved kind of thought process which comes after a lot of experience, or if one is gifted with such kind of ability to intuitively think something which will be proven to be correct at the end. So the outcome should be positive. That is what the intuitive thinking is about. But what if the you are not thinking about the immediate result, but you are thinking about a long term process, because there are things which will not manifest the ultimate result immediately. So this kind of uh, sounds very very confusing. But what should one do when one is pressed with some decision making has to happen? Then what one should do? One should go for intuitive thinking, or one should go for strategic thinking, or what? Like what? What one can do is like list down the logic of every decision. Suppose you are thinking about a certain decision, right? Why you have arrived at that particular decision is what to be documented properly. So if your indicators are some, says you have 7 indicators of success or immediate result, then according to that, what should be the planning of execution? That you need to write down somewhere, right? So please write that down. Then what will happen is, in case of an eventuality, as I say, every decision will not show correctly in the immediate time frame. So just wait and tell your audience, tell your team about the processes that you have gone through to arrive at that point. Then the other person will get an opportunity to counter your decisions, right? There can be two three ways like say the very experiences, processes, and the instances, and the very base from which your inference comes, those may be faulty, or those are not very relevant to your work workplace or your work situation. So that needs to be certain, and that can only be done with a list of parameters clearly laid out, and against that each decision point is clearly indicated why it has been done, so that the plan B, plan C, and the like say, if you with that, if you go to somebody for some feedback, then that person can see at your logic and can apply his logic, and then it can be taken forward, right? So that is the usual process, and uh, this is the layman's logic. This is the layman way of getting at critical thinking. There are certain processes of critical thinking I'll be dealing with in the subsequent days. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Lucy. Thank you.